Alright, so like I said in the first part of the video, for number 2, it's a little bit longer. We're going to have to graph the circle here using completing the square. So here we've got it in this form to begin with, which is not the correct form that we want. We want it into this equation of a circle formula that I have written down below, where we have the x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So that way then we can recognize that the center is h comma k and our radius will be r. So make sure that you get it into that form to begin with if it's not already in that form. So to do that, what we can do first of all is to group our x's and our y's together. I'm going to put them in parentheses since we are going to factor these. So we'd have x squared minus 2x is equal to actually not equal to yet, we want to leave a space, plus, and then we want to include our y's, so we have y squared plus 4y, leave another space, because we're going to put a number in there, equals, and then we want to move this minus 4 over to the other side. Remember, if you move it to the other side of the equation, that means you need to make it the opposite sign, so it is now a positive 4 instead. And then to figure out what else we need to put in those parentheses, we're going to need to go through and figure out what our b is first of all for these. So for the x's, I'm going to put it down below the graph here, off to the side. Our b is going to be -2. It's always that number in front of the x, or for the y's, it'll be the number in front of the y component. And then we need to divide that by 2. So here we get -1. And then we're going to have to square that number. We are going to write them in 2 separate steps because we are going to use both values in 2 different ways. So then that -1 we square, so we get a +1. And we will use both of those. So here to begin with, that +1 that we get once we square it goes inside the parentheses. And if we add 1 to that side of the equation, the left side, we need to also add 1 to the right side of the equation. So we'll put a +1 there. Do the same type of thing for the y's. We'll go through how to use that -1 part here in just a minute once we get to the factoring part. So for the y's, for doing that b over 2, here we'd have 4 over 2, since the value in front of y there is a 4. So we get 2 whenever we do the 4 divided by 2. And then we want to do the 2 squared. Make sure you're always putting those in parentheses, because if they are negative, you will get a different answer otherwise. So then here in this case, we're going to have a +4 here inside with the y's, which means we also need a +4 on the right side of the equation to help balance the equation. Remember, anytime you do something to one side of the equation, you also have to do it to the other side. So now is the step whenever we're factoring that we have to use this -1 and the 2 that we got from the parts before we did the squared. So here, whenever we're writing the factored form here, we'd have x -1, and it is that entire quantity squared. That's why we're putting it in the parentheses. Plus, and then we'd have our y +2, that entire quantity squared, is equal to, and then we have 4 plus 1 plus 4, so we get 9 on the right side of the equation. So here, whenever we're getting our center here, the center of this circle is going to be at 1, -2. So remember, the center is h comma k, and the original formula has x minus h and y minus k in the formula, not positive signs. So it is the opposite sign of whatever was inside the parentheses. And then for our radius, for our r, we're going to have to do the square root of 9, which in this case ends up being a whole number. So we get 3 for our radius here. And then once we have that, we can go through and graph it. So make sure that you are keeping these steps straight. They can be confusing, especially if you're not used to factoring. So make sure that you're making note of how to do this carefully as you're going through this video. So here for the center, once again, we have 1, -2 is that point. So we go to the right 1 and down 2. That is the center of the circle. And then the radius was 3. So that means from that center, we need to go 3 in all directions. So normally the easiest way to do that is to count up 3, go over to the right 3, go down 3 from that point, and then go to the left 3 from that point, and make a dot at each of those. And then you can kind of sketch in what that circle would look like from there. I'm making the curve. It's not going to be perfect once again if you're doing this by hand. It should look at least decently close there. So make sure once again if you are having questions on this stuff that you are asking, since this will be in the homework and possibly on a test.